The unlikely triumph of Oda Nobunaga. Thunder rolls across dark skies over medieval Japan. Rain pours in sheets, drenching an army of 10,000 warriors as they march confidently toward their prey. Their commander, Imagawa Yoshimoto, one of Japan's most powerful warlords, sits in his war camp, drinking sake and celebrating what he believes will be an easy victory. After all, his target is merely a small force of 300 men, led by an eccentric young lord named Oda Nobunaga. But Imagawa has made a fatal mistake. He doesn't realize he's not the hunter, he's the hunted. The year is 1560, and we're about to witness one of history's most incredible military victories, a battle that would change the course of Japan forever. This is the story of how 300 samurai accomplished the impossible, defeating an army more than 30 times their size through a combination of bold strategy, perfect timing, and sheer audacity. Picture yourself as a samurai in Nobunaga's army. You're sheltering in Kiyosu Castle, soaked to the bone, watching as the massive Imagawa force approaches. The odds seem impossible. For every one of you, there are 33 enemy warriors. Your fellow soldiers whisper among themselves, many believing this will be their last day alive. But your commander, the 26-year-old Oda Nobunaga, seems strangely calm. In fact, when Nobunaga's advisors first brought news of the Imagawa army's advance, he did something that shocked everyone. He began dancing. Performing the kusemai, a popular dance of the time, Nobunaga sang, "A man's life is 50 years. In the universe, what is that? Born in the morning, dead in the evening, such is the way of things." His advisors thought he'd lost his mind. But Nobunaga wasn't crazy. He was already formulating a plan that would become legendary. To understand the magnitude of what was about to unfold, we need to grasp just who these two commanders were. Imagawa Yoshimoto was a scion of one of Japan's most prestigious warrior families. His army was well-equipped, disciplined, and had never known defeat. He controlled 3 provinces and was making a bold push toward Kyoto, the imperial capital. Taking down the young upstart Nobunaga would be merely a stepping stone in his greater ambitions. Oda Nobunaga, on the other hand, was seen by many as a joke. Known as the Fool of Owari, he had a reputation for bizarre behavior, wearing garish clothes, singing loudly in public, and showing little respect for tradition. But beneath this eccentric exterior lay one of history's most brilliant military minds. While others saw him as crazy, Nobunaga was actually years ahead of his time, willing to break with convention and try tactics no one else would dare attempt. The battlefield itself was Okahazama, a narrow valley surrounded by steep hills, located in what is now Aichi Prefecture. On that fateful day of June 12, 1560, the weather was absolutely miserable. A powerful summer storm had turned the ground to mud and reduced visibility to almost nothing. Most commanders would see these conditions as a disaster. Nobunaga saw them as an opportunity. As Imagawa's massive army made camp for the afternoon, seeking shelter from the rain, they followed standard military protocol of the time. They set up their commander's tent, raised their battle standards, and posted guards. But they made one crucial mistake. They assumed no one would be crazy enough to attack in such terrible weather. They didn't know Nobunaga. While Imagawa's men huddled in their shelters, Nobunaga gathered his 300 warriors in Kiyosu Castle. His speech to them was brief, but powerful. Those who want to leave, leave now. Those who stay will be rewarded with certain victory. Despite the overwhelming odds, not a single samurai left. This moment would later be immortalized in countless Japanese paintings and poems. 300 warriors choosing to follow their leader on what seemed like a suicide mission. But Nobunaga had spotted something his enemy had missed. The heavy rain and poor visibility meant that Imagawa's superior numbers would count for less. In the confined space of the valley, they wouldn't be able to deploy their full force effectively. Most importantly, their overconfidence had made them careless. What happened next would become one of the most daring military maneuvers in samurai history. Nobunaga's plan was as bold as it was dangerous. While the Imagawa army relaxed in their camp, believing themselves safe from attack, he led his small force on a circuitous route through the hills. The rain that had been falling all day proved to be a crucial ally. It masked the sound of their movement and kept the enemy's scouts from spotting them. Think of it like a scene from a thriller movie, but this was real. 300 warriors, moving in single file through steep, muddy terrain. They had to maintain complete silence. One misplaced step, one clatter of armor could give away their position and spell disaster. The men were soaked to the bone, their armor weighing them down. But they pressed on, following their commander with unwavering faith. But what truly set Nobunaga's strategy apart wasn't just the surprise attack. It was his psychological warfare. Before beginning his march, he had ordered his men to leave the gates of Kiyosu Castle wide open. When Imagawa's scouts reported this back to their lord, it reinforced their belief that Nobunaga had fled in fear, abandoning his castle. This seemingly reckless act was actually a calculated move to lower the enemy's guard even further. As Nobunaga's force made their way through the hills, the Imagawa camp had settled into their afternoon routine. Picture the scene. Thousands of warriors, their armor and weapons carefully stored away from the rain, many dozing or drinking sake to ward off the cold. Imagawa Yoshimoto himself sat in his private tent, engaged in a drinking party with his closest generals. They were celebrating their inevitable victory, completely unaware that death was creeping toward them through the hills. Around mid-afternoon, something remarkable happened. The relentless rain that had been falling all day suddenly intensified. The sky grew even darker, and thunder began to roll across the valley. In this moment, Nobunaga saw his perfect opportunity. The extra coverage from the storm would make his attack even more surprising. His force had now reached a position overlooking the Imagawa camp from the rear. From this vantage point, Nobunaga could see everything: the relaxed posture of the guards, the locations of the command tents, the general disorder of an army that felt completely secure. He waited, watching, timing his attack perfectly. Then, as a particularly loud crack of thunder rolled across the sky, Nobunaga gave the signal. His 300 warriors, who had been crouching in the mud and rain for nearly an hour, burst into action. They charged down the hillside, using the thunder to mask the sound of their approach. The first few Imagawa soldiers who spotted them barely had time to shout warnings before being cut down. What happened next was pure chaos, but a chaos that Nobunaga had carefully orchestrated. His men had been thoroughly briefed on their roles. They didn't just attack randomly. They had specific targets and moved in coordinated groups. Their primary objective was to create as much confusion as possible. The surprise was total. Imagine you're an Imagawa soldier, relaxing in your tent, when suddenly warriors burst in from all directions, shouting war cries and cutting down everyone in their path. The driving rain made it impossible to tell how many attackers there were. For all the Imagawa army knew, they could be under attack from thousands. In the confusion, many of Imagawa's warriors ended up fighting each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe in the rain and chaos. The narrow valley worked against them. Their huge numbers, usually an advantage, now became a liability as soldiers tripped over each other trying to reach their weapons and form battle lines. But the masterpiece of Nobunaga's strategy was yet to come. He had divided his small force into multiple groups, each attacking from a slightly different angle. As they charged into the camp, they set fire to anything that would burn, despite the rain. The flames might not have spread far in the wet conditions, but the smoke they created added to the confusion. More importantly, his men had been ordered to knock down every war banner and standard they could find. This was psychological warfare at its finest. In medieval Japanese warfare, these standards weren't just for show. They were crucial for battlefield communication and unit coordination. By systematically destroying them, Nobunaga's forces effectively blinded the Imagawa army's command structure. No one knew where to rally, who to follow, or even which direction the attack was coming from. Meanwhile, Imagawa Yoshimoto remained in his command tent, at first believing the commotion to be nothing more than a drunken brawl among his own men. This fatal misconception would be his last mistake. The defining moment of the battle came when two of Nobunaga's samurai, Mori Shinsuke and Hattori Kohei, fought their way through the chaos to Imagawa Yoshimoto's command tent. Legend has it that Yoshimoto, still believing the commotion to be a drunken brawl among his own men, angrily stepped out of his tent to silence the disturbance. Instead, he found himself face to face with enemy warriors. Even in this moment of surprise, Yoshimoto showed the fighting spirit of a samurai. He managed to draw his sword and fight back, but he was heavily outnumbered. Within moments, one of the samurai's blades found its mark, and Imagawa Yoshimoto, one of the most powerful warlords in Japan, fell dead in the mud. The news of Yoshimoto's death spread through the Imagawa army like wildfire. Remember, this was an army that had never known defeat, led by a commander they believed to be invincible. The psychological impact was devastating. What had started as confusion now turned into full-blown panic. Thousands of warriors, many of them elite samurai who had never fled from battle before, suddenly found themselves running for their lives. The retreat quickly became a rout. In the narrow confines of the valley, fleeing soldiers trampled each other in their desperation to escape. Nobunaga's men, although vastly outnumbered, pressed their advantage relentlessly. The very size of the Imagawa army, which had been their greatest strength, now became their greatest weakness. The more they panicked, the more they got in each other's way. By the time the sun set on that rain-soaked battlefield, one of the most improbable victories in military history had been achieved. The mighty Imagawa army, which had marched out that morning 10,000 strong, had been utterly destroyed. Their casualties were staggering, thousands dead, including their commander and most of their senior officers. Nobunaga's losses, by contrast, were minimal. But the significance of Okehazama goes far beyond the numbers. This battle marked a turning point in Japanese history. Before Okehazama, Oda Nobunaga was seen as a minor regional lord, dismissed by many as an eccentric upstart. After Okehazama, he was recognized as a military genius. The victory gave him control over additional territories and resources, setting him on the path to becoming one of Japan's greatest unifiers. More importantly, the Battle of Okehazama revolutionized Japanese warfare. Nobunaga had demonstrated that superior numbers weren't everything. Innovative tactics, psychological warfare, and adaptability could overcome seemingly impossible odds. His victory inspired a new generation of commanders to think differently about warfare, leading to numerous military innovations in the decades that followed. The battle site today is a peaceful park in modern Japan, marked by a small monument. Standing there, it's hard to imagine the chaos and violence that once engulfed this quiet valley, but the lessons of Okehazama still resonate today. Not just in military academies, but in boardrooms and leadership seminars worldwide. Think about it. Nobunaga's success wasn't just about military tactics. It was about seeing opportunity where others saw only obstacles. The rain that his enemies saw as a hindrance, he used as an advantage. The small size of his force, which should have been a weakness, he turned into a strength through mobility and surprise. Even his reputation as an eccentric became a weapon, causing his enemies to underestimate him fatally. The Battle of Okehazama teaches us that sometimes the greatest victories come not from overwhelming force, but from innovative thinking and the courage to attempt what others believe impossible. It shows us that leadership isn't about having the most resources, but about making the best use of what you have. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that history's greatest achievements often come from those who dare to defy conventional wisdom. This victory launched Nobunaga's meteoric rise to power. Within a few years, he would control more territory than any other warlord in Japan, implementing revolutionary policies that would help shape the nation's future. His innovations weren't limited to the battlefield. He promoted free trade, abolished toll roads, and encouraged the development of new technologies. In many ways, he was Japan's first modern ruler. The story of how 300 samurai defeated an army of 10,000 at Okahazama isn't just a tale of military triumph. It's a testament to the power of innovation, courage, and leadership. It shows us that even today, whether in business, politics, or our personal lives, seemingly impossible odds can be overcome with the right combination of strategy, timing, and daring. As we leave the rain-soaked battlefield of Okahazama, we're reminded that history's greatest lessons often come from its most unexpected moments. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to think differently, to see possibility where others see only defeat, to change the course of history forever. Thank you for watching this incredible story from Japanese history. If you enjoyed learning about the Battle of Okahazama, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories from Japan's past. Also, let us know in the comments what other aspects of Japanese history you'd like us to explore in future videos. Until next time, sayonara.